All right. Looks like everything's working. I always have to check. I've had too many things crash last minute. So let's find out. That's not me. That ain't me, right? I have audio. Is it loud enough? Probably not. All right, we can maybe turn up the mic a little bit. Let's see if we can find that. Boop. There we go. Let's turn you up a little bit and see if that makes a difference. And how we looking? Probably here. There we go. That sounds good. We can now mute this. Maybe. All right, so that should be everything we need. We're going to do a league list. Let me get centered on my camera a little bit better. It's backwards. I'm backwards. I don't know. Everything's crazy right now. We're going to do a league list recap. We're going to talk about my enforcers list. We're going to talk about each of my opponents' lists. I'm going to do a brief overview of how different things happen in each round. I'm going to do my best. I don't have a ton of pictures. I normally try to take pictures. But man, like the last few weeks for me have been very hectic, which is part of why I haven't been posting super regularly. My teenage daughter is getting ready for her first school dance. It's her 8th grade dance. Excuse me. So we're getting ready for that. My son's had some stuff going on. It's just been a very busy few weeks here, so I have not been doing my due diligence. I'm just resizing some stuff to make sure that I'm getting things posted, and I apologize. I do have the plague video on deck. It is the specialist video. I may end up re-recording that. I was kind of in a rush when I was doing that because I was taking care of some stuff, and as going back to the family stuff. My daughter's also having some. She's having a rough time right now, so the school may end up calling in the middle of the stream. So if I'm just like, "Hey, gotta go," it's so I can go take care of her. Just so everybody's aware. Hey, if this goes down, I'll give a little warning, but it's going down, and I'm gonna go take care of my kid. So just to put that up front. A couple other things to let everybody know. Like I said, I got the Plague Specialist video done. I am working on the support video. I actually have just applied to be a Mantic Pathfinder, so we will see how that goes here pretty soon. And then I will also be at Adepticon. I'm going to play in the Pathfinder tournament. I'm more than likely going to play in the Dead Zone event as well. I was kicking around doing either Dead Zone or Kings of War, but when I started thinking about it, Dead Zone makes more sense because I don't have a Kings of War army, so I'd have to build and paint that on top of the painting that I already have to do because one of my buddies is borrowing an army so he can play as well. So I can just use models that I'm already bringing in order to play in that. So it just makes more sense to do it that way. So that's most likely what I'll be doing is Firefight on Thursday, Dead Zone on Friday, and then probably just kind of hanging out on Saturday and Sunday and seeing what I can get into. So look forward to that. That being said, before we dig into the lists, I want to also give my mandatory shout out to Military Gaming Command. MilitaryGamingCommand.org. If you are curious on what they do, check their website out. They use gaming to build a community to support veterans and active service members, and use gaming to support wounded service members and veterans. Really awesome what they do, and I really appreciate everything that they do for fellow veterans and service members. So again, I want to thank them for what they do. This isn't paid. I just like shouting them out. And then outside of that, if you like Firefight, there's going to be, if you're on YouTube watching, there's going to be some links in the description They're Amazon affiliate links. You can always click those links if you're going to make your purchase. I get a little commission, so it's a great way to support the channel, but it doesn't cost you anything extra. But that's not what we're here for. What we're here for is list recap. And if I look like I'm a little rough today, I just didn't sleep well. Like I said, we've had a lot going on. So I'm going to do my best. If I'm a little scatterbrained, I apologize. We'll get through it together. First, I'm going to go over my list. We're going to talk about why I took some of the things that I took, my intent behind them, what I was thinking, and how I feel like, or how I felt going into it, it was going to work. And then at the end, we'll talk about how it actually worked. And, you know, we'll do a little bit of both throughout, but that's the intent. It was a 1,500 point league. We had been playing at 1250 because that has been my experience with the game so far. Michigan GT, any of the tournaments I've been to so far have been 1,250 points. I took 2 commanders. I took the jet bike lieutenant and I took the peacekeeper captain. The jet bike lieutenant was kind of I don't know if I want him or not, but we're going to slap him in to see how it goes. The intent behind it was that, he gives me 2 extra command dice, which when I've played with the enforcers, I haven't felt like I've needed a ton of command dice. I've always kind of felt like I've had enough command points for the most part. There have been turns here or there where I think, man, I could have used a few more to maybe like remove some pins or do something else. But by and large, I've not felt bad about the number of command points I've had. And that's with taking 1 commander almost every game I've ever played. But I thought, we'll work in a second commander. I like jet bikes. They're a good utility unit. So rather than take a separate unit of jet bikes, I'll just take a command unit of jet bikes. And we'll see how it goes. Because when I took the separate unit, it was just 2 jet bikes and one of them had a burst laser. So the only thing I'm really losing is the burst laser. But I'm gaining 2 black command dice and the commander's aura. Now, his aura is all friendly units in 6 inches gain headstrong. And, headstrong is you make a nerve test, and if you pass it, you just get rid of your pin token. And you do that at the start of your activation. Pretty good. It's a great way to try to get rid of pin tokens as people are putting them on you, so that's really handy. Especially if you run light on commanders the way that I tend to. I'm just making sure that's not a message from the school. It is not. Perfect. Okay. So again, the getting rid of pins is helpful. Jet bikes are really helpful. They have the scout move. They move 12. They sprint 18. It's overall just a good utility unit. They're 3 hit points, or at least the lieutenant is. The base bike is 2, so there's 5 hit points in the unit. So it's just kind of like a side grade rather than a full-on upgrade or downgrade to go from regular jet bikes to the lieutenant. I believe there are a little bit more points for the lieutenant, but again, I feel like you're getting good things. Elusive 1's pretty good. So again, overall, just a good unit. And the 2 black dice were very beneficial for me. They did help me out quite a bit. There were definitely some turns where I was glad to have the extra command points or even just a commander to reroll the command dice. The Peacekeeper Captain to me is just an auto take. He is just that good. This is the one command unit that has been in literally every list I've ever taken for this army. That is how good I think it is. I took a friend in his unit this time. I gave him Phase Claws. So he swings 4 dice at AP3 with Elite. He does lose his gun, but if I bring... Yep, there it is. Hey, Rick, nice to see you in the stream, buddy. Yeah, he is. He's absurdly good. I took the Phase Claws just to try something a little bit different. The 4 dice with Elite. Now, they don't have countercharge. They have controlled fire, so you do lose access to his shooting if you get charged. So that's one of those trade-offs where you get more melee dice, but you don't get any kind of charge reaction with that model specifically. But that's okay. This was more just to test it out. I didn't hate the phase claws. I didn't love them. They were good when they were good, and there were a couple games where I was, or a couple even just like melees where I thought, man, I wish I had the energy gauntlets. But by and large, I didn't really notice a big difference, but I also didn't throw him out in combat so much. And then, like I said, I took one friend in the unit, and that's just to give it a little bit of girth. A couple extra hit points with Armor 7 and Resilient 1 is pretty solid. But the main reason I think this dude is an auto take is that aura, and we talked about it in my Enforcers breakdown when I did the command units. He has a 12-inch aura that gives Weight of Fire and Vicious to all friendly units. It's not restricted to non-vehicles. So if you've got an Ajax Strider or a regular Strider or the Tank Buster Strider, they are going to get it. The Jets are going to get it. To me, Striders we're going to touch on because I've got them in the list. That's another unit that to me for Enforcers is an auto-include in some capacity. You probably want to make sure you have 1 to 2 because of what they can bring to the table. And for the points efficiency that they bring it, they're very good. Now we're going to take a look at troops. I tried a little bit different build this time. We had 1,500 points. I had been bringing more Peacekeeper Defenders, and I brought no regular Peacekeepers previously, just some Defenders. My only Peacekeepers was the command unit. And I thought, man, let's try some base Peacekeeper units. Let's see how these guys go as troops. So I have 2 squads of those, and they're 3-man squads for each one. And I put the phase claws on the leaders, again, just to test them out. And that didn't feel so bad because the base Peacekeepers get countercharge and controlled fire. So you get to pick and choose which one you want to do as a charge reaction. So if you charge me, I could be like, oh, okay, well, I can just shoot this unit with 6 dice because I got 2 boys with Dominator rifles. Or I can just countercharge. I can upgrade my fight priority by 1, and we can just throw a bunch of dice, and we'll see what happens. So having that option is very nice for this unit, which is why taking one model with phase claws didn't feel so bad. I don't think I'd take a whole squad with phase claws, just because losing controlled fire, that's kind of a big hit. When you've got Dominator rifles, and that's to me the Dominator is the best weapon profile in the Enforcers army. 3 dice at AP1 with all of the shooting buffs that you can get from things like the Peacekeeper Captain's Aura. It's just such a great versatile weapon that really only doesn't do well against heavy armor. So it's just kind of this really super versatile weapon that can do a little bit of anything. And the higher volume of 3 dice makes it fantastic to me. So that's how I kind of built those Peacekeepers. And again, the intent here was I'm going to build these guys. I'm going to put them on the table. We're going to kind of build a slightly more durable list is the intent. I still have a lot of regular operatives, but I wanted to bring a bigger, chunkier unit like the Peacekeepers that I hadn't brought before outside of just the unit of Defenders. I have 3 squads of operatives, and they are all kitted out the exact same way. It's 4 laser rifles, 1 burst laser. And that, so far for me, has been the absolute best loadout, again, for points. 140 points gives you 5 bodies, which is 10 hit points at armor 6. They throw adequate amounts of dice because the laser rifles are 2 dice. And the burst laser is 4 dice. So again, with this loadout at 18 inches, you're going to throw 12 dice when you shoot. And then because the laser rifles are trademark, there's not an order that doesn't benefit them. You've got the order that can extend their range, give them marksman, increase their AP. You've got the one that gives them anti-tank against vehicles and extra AP. So there's a lot of, again, versatility in this unit. And to me, that's where the Enforcers shine, is when you lean into their kind of Swiss Army build, their versatility that they have. If you try to hyper fixate on shooting or melee, for most of the units, I feel like it doesn't work. But if you really lean into that generalist approach of I'm going to do a little bit of everything, that to me is where they really shine. I found the burst lasers to be the best weapons upgrade that I can give them. And I know I've talked to the community. A lot of people have been, hey, you should check out the flamers. I forget what they're called. But they just don't do it for me. You know, the shorter range, and it's nerve check or activate, and I think it's only 2 dice if I remember right. I'll take 4 dice at a longer range with pinning, and you know, just kind of bank on getting those dice through. You know, yes, I could maybe mark you as activated if I had that It Burns weapon, but I have other things that can do that as well. I have units that I can charge with that if I win the assault, I'll mark you as activated. And, you know, if I'm going against a hordier army like a brick of zombies or maybe even like crawlers or stalkers, the burst lasers aren't going to be necessarily as good as being able to mark them as activated, but hitting them with a pinning weapon and getting extra dice to remove extra bodies, to me is just a great approach. You know, if you've got 15 zombies in a unit and I can kill an extra 1 or 2 zombies and pin the zombies, sure, they can charge, because I believe they're unflinching if I remember right, but you've got less bodies that I have to contend with, and unless you've pinned whatever you're charging at, especially with my enforcers, I'm either going to get to shoot them or countercharge with them in a lot of scenarios. Maybe not all scenarios, but a lot of them. And there's definitely ways that you can make your operatives more efficient to even just maximize the amount of bodies that you can lift with these enforcers. So I've got 3 units of the regular operatives, again, just for that versatility. Compared to a lot of things, they're semi-cheap with their good armor, good shooting, good fighting. Like, the volume's low, but they still hit on 4s. And 2 hit points. Controlled fire means that you can really kind of dictate the flow of combats if you're smart with your activations. And I know I have had a couple people ask me why I do 5 model units instead of 6. And there's a lot of reasons for that. You know, I've had one guy like, hey man, this doesn't make sense. Like, why do you do this? This seems super weird. Well, there's a few reasons for that. The first is that I come from 40K, right? I have a very extensive 40K background, and I'm just lazy. And I'm just going to be blunt with you about it. You know, I could put an extra body in there, but I'm just like, why? Like, 5 is just as good as 6 in my brain. You know, and maybe a 6-man would do me better. But then what it also does is over the course of 3 units, if these guys are 20 points each, I've now saved 60 points, right? Because I think the base unit is 130 for 5 of them. So they're actually a little bit more. But then I think the upgrades, like as you add models on, I think they're around 20. So if you're saving 20 points each, right? Over 3 squads, I've saved 60 points. I also have 2 squads of assault enforcers where I've saved another roughly 20 points. So now I've saved 100 points. I almost have enough points to just slap a whole extra unit in. And that's part of why also is that by keeping these squads small, when I've got enforcers on the table, it allows me to bring more units, which allows me to not get overwhelmed by armies that can flood the board with extensive action economy. You know, it can kind of help me manipulate the action economy a little bit better than if I were to have fewer bigger units, so that once I've activated, I'm not just SOL. I can maybe try to push one of my activations a little bit later, maybe an extra activation or 2 later than I normally would, as a charge deterrent or anything like that. So that's also part of why. It doesn't mean it's better than having 6 or however many you want to have. It just means that's why I do it. I do have 2 squads of assault enforcers. I think these things are the absolute bee's knees. I love them. Again, it's the epitome of what I think makes enforcers really, really good is the versatility. Now, you might be like, Chris, you're out of control. Like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. These guys shoot on 5s. They have a junk pistol. They don't really shoot well. But what I'm going to tell you is, no, they don't shoot well. But what they do is have trademark pistols. So if you need that damage, for example, If you need that one damage to go through a vehicle to try to pin it, you can give them anti-vehicle and try to pin that vehicle so that you can charge into it without maybe a controlled fire reaction, things like that. You can extend the range on it if you need to maybe do some damage to another unit before you walk into another unit. So again, they just have a lot of versatility. You have a 2 attacks at AP1 on your base guys. I will almost always upgrade to the Energy Gauntlet just to get those 2 AP2 attacks. I would consider doing the Phase Claws, except I just don't think they're worth 5 points. That's just, again, a personal thing. I think what you lose in terms of interacting with orders outweighs what you gain from the extra attack in the Elite. And that's, again, just based on what I'm trying to get out of the squad. Now, I do know that if you take 5 Assault Enforcers and put Phase Claws on them, they are a good unit that will blend just about anything they touch. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make them as versatile as I can. You know, if you've got a mule over here and that thing's giving me fits and I need to try to pin it, and then I want to walk into combat against something else, I can slap the order on it, give them anti-tank, try to pin that mule with my pistols, and then walk into this other unit and try to beat it in combat. And I'm going to throw enough dice that unless it's a really dedicated melee unit or just like a high volume unit, I'm probably going to win. You know, if it's 10 zombies and I walk into combat against 10 zombies, I'm going to take those odds, because unless zombies charge, they're not that scary, right? And, you know, if you've got them in a unit of 10, or, you know, if you've, and again, this is a great thing you can do with these guys if you keep their pistols, is you can even shoot the zombies. If they're at like 10, 11 models, you can shoot them to try to get them below that 10 mark so they lose their horde rule and then walk into combat. So now that the zombies aren't getting that +1 to hit when you walk into combat because they have the bigger numbers. So again, that's my take on it. That's why I don't put the Phase Claws on the Assault Enforcers, because the pistol just brings a versatility to the unit. And it might not sound like a lot, but when you've only got 5 shots, if you've got a 50-50 die roll, you go down to 4 shots. That doesn't sound like a big deal, but you go from 2 to 2.5 hits. So that means you go from basically 2 to almost 3 hits. And then when you still got to roll armor, that 0.5 hits in your math, that actually could end up being a big deal. So that's how I got to where I was with the Assault Enforcers. And then to round the list up, and if you've noticed, like, most of my list is troops, because I think that the troops options for Enforcers are just that good. I have 2 Striders. This time I built them the exact same. I did the Tank Buster with Marksman because I didn't really have anything to deal with tanks. But I don't think there's a bad loadout option for the Striders. I haven't played the Ajax on the table yet, but I'm going to very soon. And I think that thing looks very good. I think it, again, does what Enforcers do very well. It's a very versatile unit. So the Tank Buster, the reason I take that is because it gives me 2 shots at 24 inches for taking out tanks with AP4. So even if you've got like some of the toughest armor in the game, worst case scenario, I'm going to be at a 50-50 die roll to damage you. And again, we've got the Peacekeeper aura in here, and it's in there not just for the Striders, but 70% of the reason I take it is for the Striders. Because if I can keep 1 Strider over here and 1 Strider over here, and I can keep that Peacekeeper captain right in the middle, I now have 4 anti-tank shots that hit on 4s, reroll 1s with weight of fire 1, and vicious. So that makes them extremely efficient. And man, I'm telling you, in the 3 rounds of this league, there wasn't a single game where I was like, gosh, I wish I had something instead of Striders. I prefer them over the heavy weapons teams. I prefer them over the Nova Shock Boys. And a lot of it stems from what you get for the points that you get, and also how my lists are built. If you look, like I said, most of my list is it's mostly troops. So I have a lot of infantry. I have a lot of troop. I have a lot of things that can just go sit on an objective. I can go take an objective. So now I just have 2 units that are armor 7, heavy armor, controlled fire, and they can really just kind of sit in the back. They can fight okay. They get 3 dice at AP1 and hit on 4s, so they're not trash when they have to charge or get charged. And in fact, there were times where I would shoot it and then walk into something just because I could. At 3 dice hitting on 4s, that's worth it to me. But it's one of those, to me, like if I were to compare them to the heavy weapons team, they're 180 points for the heavy weapons team. Yes, you get more hit points. It's 8 hit points. And you get more missiles, right? You get 4 shots instead of 2 shots. And it's 36-inch range instead of 24-inch range. But they're armor 6 instead of 7. They don't have heavy armor. And so they're a little bit more susceptible to if your opponent has Rainmakers or the Mortar Mule, like just sitting there and indirecting it to try to pin them. And, sure, maybe my missiles aren't going to activate a ton, but if I'm taking, let's say you hit me with mortars and I take 1 damage the first turn, and then I take 1 damage the second turn, I've now lost 25% of my missile shots by turn 2. And they've been pinned 2 straight turns. So again, that hampers my ability to move them if I need to. So to me, that's why the Striders, for their points, are just a better anti-tank option than those guys. And then when we look at the Nova Shock homies, these guys are phenomenal. Don't misunderstand what I'm telling you. What I'm saying is, what I'm trying to get out of them, the Striders are giving it to me better. Because the Nova Shock Peacekeepers, you get 2 models, you get 6 hit points at armor 8, which is fantastic. Resilient 1, still hit on 4s, like that all is the same, but they go up 10 points a model to get the anti-tank. So now we're up to 170 points for 4 dice with anti-tank at AP4, or 135 points for 2 dice that re-roll hits of 1, right? Because the 10 points of that is the marksman upgrade, and more damage. So it's to me, you've got better range, better damage, baked in marksman. Like, what's not to love about the Striders? That's kind of how I look at them when I'm list building. So to me, the Striders are fantastic. I will include them in every list. Just a heads up, this is probably going to be a long-ish video. Let me double check this real quick. Okay, that's fine. Not the school. Perfect. Alright, so my first round was against Asterions, and it was on the mission control. We're going to take a look at, that's not his list. Here is his list. And it was pretty cool. I've only played Asterions against this guy. I have not seen anybody else play them yet. So I couldn't tell you like how other people play them or anything like that, and that's okay. But he's got the Kalishi Death Strike, which I think is we kind of just call them witches, because again, a lot of our group came from 40k, and that's kind of what they remind us of. Yeah, that's it. Within 12 inches, may add 3 inches. So gives a mobility buff to the other Kalishi. Black Talon Prime, which again, I'm going to use a lot of 40k terms, and it's not to disrespect anything or anybody, but again, like, that's how a lot of my channel was built, and that's where my background is. So the Black Talon Primes are kind of like Baharoth, right? The Phoenix Lord for the Swooping Hawks, and that's kind of what the Black Talons are kind of like Swooping Hawks. They come in, they deep strike, they have really efficient shooting, they're really, really good. You can shoot multiple times with his order. 2 friendly Black Talon units within 12 inches may immediately make a shoot action. These units are not then marked activated unless they already were. So you can have 2 units of Black Talons. They can both shoot, and then he can make them shoot again, or the reverse. He can make them both shoot, and then they can both shoot. So you could get effectively 4 shooting actions out of 2 units of Black Talons in a 1 turn. And it's gross. It does require some finesse to position, whether you start with them in the air or on the table. The prime has to start on the table if you want to use that order the turn, like the first turn everybody else comes out. So if you have 2 units of Black Talon and aerial assault, in turn 2, they'll come down, but they need to be down by the prime, and then they need to be down by the prime, and the prime has to have been on the table at the start of that turn. So it does require some kind of finessing in order to set up. Honestly, I think you're better off just starting with everything on the table with them, unless you have somebody who's got maybe like some mortars that can indirect pin things. And that's just because they're not exactly durable. Like, they're not trash. But if I hit you with an indirect mortar and I pin you and you lose a couple bodies, that could be bad. Now, they do have shields, and I think the Black Talons also have shields. So it's not like the mortars are just going to delete them. You'll have to chew through shields. But like, there was one game I played at a tournament where my opponent had 2 or 3 indirect weapons, and it didn't really do a lot. You know, maybe killed a model a turn. But if you could focus fire on one unit, you could at least knock shields off and potentially get rid of a unit. Or you could pin them, which could slow them down a little bit, prevent them from shooting, things like that. So these are just all things to keep in mind when you're playing against him. He does have an Overseer. I don't know what this thing is. Like, I just know I kill it, you know. All friendly units within 9. Keyword, increase their shields by 1. Okay. So he's pretty cool. I think I killed him early. And that just came down to a misplay on my opponent's part. I'm trying to remember now. Because I think he kind of stuck it out there. And I managed to tag it and then chain activate and then charge it, if I remember right. And I was just like, nah, I'm not dealing with this. This can go away. And then a lot of ciphers and cipher wardens. Like, that's the list, is really what the meat of the list is. You know, so they are advanced training. They're constructs, so they can't be pinned. I don't remember if the Black Talons are constructs. I should check that right now. Yeah, they are. So they can't even be pinned. So that didn't matter. I apologize. But ciphers, a lot of constructs. I think that's just how the Asterions rock. I've not looked through them a ton yet. Shield 4. The one thing I'm going to tell you is my experience into Asterions, and again, this could just be because of who I play against, but they are really efficient, but they don't have a ton of volume. Like, yes, I've got this charge glove, right? And this charge glove has a 12-inch range at 2 dice. Sure, it has knockback, but at the same time, they're not scary. Like, they have to get within 6 for knockback to matter. And then not only that, there's no AP. They don't have controlled fire. They only have counter charge and evade. So they can either try to run away from me, or they can try to up their priority. And again, with enforcers, I wasn't worried about counter charge. Sure, it's 2 dice, but there's only 4 models in the unit, so it's only 8 dice. They're going to hit on 4s if I charge them. You know, so again, 8 dice hitting on 4s, they maybe get 5-6 hits. So they might get 1, maybe 2 damage through on average. Whereas if I'm charging you with Assault Enforcers, if I've got that clean charge, I'm going to hit on 3s, and it's going to be 10 dice, and I'm going to be AP 1. So if I can get those shields down, and this goes back to why I was telling everybody, like, this is why I still have pistols on my guys. I don't take pistols off. Like, I still want shooting, because, again, in this situation, I might throw pistols. Maybe that unit has a shield left. Well, I might throw pistols just to chip that shield off and then literally walk into combat. Sure, we're going to resolve at the same time, or maybe they resolve first if they haven't already activated. But I'm going to play those odds. I've got better AP. I've got a higher volume because of more models. And even if they kill one, worst case scenario, we're throwing the same amount of dice. We're hitting the same, but I have AP and you don't. And you have 1 hit point and I don't. So it only takes 4 damage to go through for me to wipe you, whereas it's going to take more damage for you to wipe me. So again, I'm just playing the odds, you know. And that's the Wardens. The regular Ciphers are shootier, but they are still they're 1 die for the no rifles, and then you can take the fission beamer, which is the one he took, which arguably you should. It's 3 dice, AP3, anti-tank targeting systems. Really good gun. Really good gun. Now this unit does have controlled fire, so you do have to kind of be careful charging into them. You want to try to force them to, you know, activate before you can charge them, and that's what I did well into him, was just planking him with bullshit, right? Like, oh, I'll activate my regular enforcer operatives. Oh, well, you're 20 inches away. Well, I'll just stand here, and I'll give them the extended range and marksman, and I'm just gonna plink your shields off, and I'm just gonna throw a bunch of dice at you, and then you're either gonna move up, or next turn I'm just gonna activate the order and do it all over again. As I creep my assault enforcers up to charge you, or as I get my peacekeepers into position to charge you, or clean you up with their dominators, things like that. He did have a transport. Again, real good. He put the Kalishi, I think. I don't remember what he put in there. I think it was the Kalishi. Maybe they started on the table. I don't remember what went in there. I remember, I think it was a unit of Kalishi and maybe the character were in there. I could be wrong on that. But, honestly, like, I just kind of ignored it until I couldn't. I think at one point he had planted it right in the middle of the table, and at that point it was just like, okay, well, now I have to chew your shields off, and now I have to anti-vehicle my rifles to try to pin you. My Striders, honestly, my Striders spent more time shooting at things like Wardens and Cypher Wardens than it did at vehicles. He's got the 2 tanks, the 2 assassins. Just let them do whatever they wanted. Didn't care. Because it was just 2 units that were sitting in his deployment zone, not doing anything but sitting and shooting. And there's nothing I could do about it. I couldn't reach them right away, so I wasn't going to stress about it. So it was just like, all right, you want to throw 2 railgun dice at me that hit on 4s. I'm going to try to make sure I have cover. I'm going to try to make sure I can do whatever I can to protect myself. But at the end of the day, there's nothing I can do about it. So I'm just going to let them do what they do. And then I'm just going to try to mop up all of your scoring units. And then if your tanks are what win you the game, then I guess the tanks win you the game. And that actually ended up going very well for me. I think the final score was 20-11 in control. And really what it came down to, and I think this is something that he's struggling with as a player, is that he spreads out too much. Again, we come from 40K. And in 40K, you can kind of spread out a little bit more because of the way the game is structured. You know what your opponent's going to be able to do based on how you move. And so with alternating activations, it creates a different type of strategy where just because I move something here, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be safe. Because maybe something happens somewhere else, etc., etc. And because of how this game is structured, I'm not going to just move it out, shoot it, and then have a way to move it back for a lot of armies. Stuff like that. So it's one of those, like, I think that was part of it, was just a little bit too spread out. Whereas I tend to, especially with enforcers, I'll create a strong side and a weak side. And then my strong side will have maybe 70% of my army. And my weak side might have like 20 to 30%, right? Like it's just a smaller piece of my army. And what that'll do for me is it allows me to focus on taking half the table and then pushing. And it's just one of those, like, that's worked very well for me. And I think he just struggles with the playing half the board coming from 40K. So, but like I said, overall, very good game. Give me 1 second. I'm going to go shut my door. There we go. Overall, very good game. Had a lot of fun. He's a great dude to play with. I've played many games with him. Not just Firefight, but also Warhammer, all kinds of stuff. Blood Bowl. We've done a lot together. So, fantastic dude to play with. Had a good time. So overall, I think he did pretty well. I think his list works. I think he's still trying to figure out the finesse of playing it. But, like I said, can't complain. Good time, good game. And it really came down to turn 4 and 5. I was able to kill enough units at that point that it was just like, you're not scoring. And that's the other thing that I've... And I might be gambling a bit here. But one of the things that I do with my enforcers is I don't score early. And I bank on being able to make up those points in turns 3 or 4 and 5. So just something to think about, right? Like, I don't know if it's the right way to play them, but it's the way I play them. Let's see, round 2, I played Garrett, and we did Extraction. Let's see, here's Garrett's list. Man, this game was rough. And again, this is why I was like, I might be gambling, because this was a game where me not scoring early could have been very detrimental. Our final score, I think it was actually 11 to 16. I know it said 13 on the spreadsheet. Basically, whatever the score was, a failed nerve check is what kept him from tying and then having us go to kill points. And that's what it was. So it might have been 13. I don't remember exactly how it shook out. But we're going to go over his list. We're going to talk about what it did well, and what was so rough about it. Let's see. He's got 2 brawler captains. When they declare a charge, all friendly non-vehicle units within 6 inches may first take a shoot action against the unit being charged. It's rough. And it allows for Rainmakers to shoot 2 and 3 times in a turn. It is brutal. And if I have not voiced my disdain for Rainmakers, I'm going to tell you right now, I just hate them. And it's nothing against Rainmakers, honestly. And it's one of those, like, I don't even hate them. Like, they're just such a weird unit, and they just give me fits. And part of it is luck, and part of it is they're just a really good unit. The part that's luck is that literally every time I've charged them, except for maybe one game, and I think that might have been the game I played against Jordan at Michigan GT, but pretty much every game I've played them, if I've shot at them or I've charged them, I've done like 1 damage. Like, I've barely done anything. Now, don't get me wrong, I've done enough to win the combat most times. But if I'm throwing like 10 dice and I get 1 damage through, and then they get no damage through, like, yeah, I won the combat, but it'd be a lot nicer if I removed a model, So it's one of those, like, I might shoot them and pin them and then charge them, and after doing all of that, I might do 1 damage. Like the burst laser hits, doesn't do any damage. Then I charge them and do 1 damage in melee. And that's just been my experience, is like, my dice are just like, oh no, it's brawlers. No. Or Rainmakers, I mean. But, so, anyway, his list has 2 brawler captains. And because those are command orders, each brawler captain can issue that command order. So it does allow brawler captains to let Rainmakers, for example, shoot multiple times. And it is, like I said, it's rough. It's rough. The Marauder Mule Transport, I don't even remember what was in it. Again, this was a unit that I think he kind of misplayed. It ended up dying pretty quickly, if I remember right. Like, it did eat a tank buster, a Strider. Like, I shot him, and, dice are dice. And I think I hit once and did like 2 damage. It did pin it. But it's one of those like, between that and charging it, probably should have died that turn, and I think it died the next turn. Is what it is. But he had a Marauder Mule Transport, Commandos. I think, we have 3 units of Commandos. Yeah. So it looks like 30 Commandos on the table. We've got 18 dice. Or rifles, I mean. And he's starting to kind of adopt the same philosophy with Commandos that I had started to adopt with Crawlers. And that's basically like, if you're pushing me to 7s, because they hit on 5s. If you're stealthy and you're this and you're that, I'm just going to blaze away. I'm going to get the extra dice. But he had 30 Commandos, which still throw 2 dice in melee, so they're not, like, shitty by any stretch of the imagination. Overwhelm 7, and then this was Extraction, so this was the mission where we had to get the HVAs and then run away with them. And we're going to talk about what really ended up saving me the game, had I not done this. But he had 30 Commandos. Right, 1, 2, 3. And then probably about the same in Brawlers. We had a 5-man. 1, 2, 5, 10, 15. So 15 Brawlers. And the Brawlers were rough. Like, those were what, like, I had to look out for. Because I couldn't just charge them. They have AP. They have good volume. Like, they were a unit that I had to be cognizant of. Sure, there's only 5 of them, but they could win an assault against my Enforcers if I wasn't careful. He had a Gruntbot, a unit of 4 Gruntbots, which, again, these are, like, super weird. And I think these things are awesome. Seeing these on the table was just like, man, all right, these are really good. They are all melee kitted out, but it's 4 dice at AP2 with anti-tank. They're armor 7, so they're a lot like a Strider. Less hit points, don't have vehicle, and don't have beast. So that's an important thing to point out. Like, these things are really good. And I'm glad that he's starting to kind of figure out how to use them. Some Ripper Maulers. I don't remember which one these are. Are these? Yeah, these are the Mega Knobs, effectively, like all melee. 3 attacks now. So these guys ended up not really interacting in the game. I think early on they did grab an HVA, and then he started moving them back. And again, 3 hit points at armor 6. I wasn't going to just chew through them really quickly. I did end up killing them. But that was a good play for him. Initially, I was like, ooh, I don't know. That seems kind of weird. But as he's running away and I'm trying to chew him up with just, like, no AP shooting, that was smart, But 2 units of Ripper Maulers and then a big brick of Rainmakers. He took 4 of them, and that's 210 points, right? Like, these guys are beefy, but they get so much. Like, they have the rotary cannon, the Hue Beamer, and then the rocket salvo. And it's just so much. Especially in a unit this big. And then if he charges me, he can shoot me with him again if they're in range with that Brawler Captain. And he can do that multiple times if he's got his positioning good. So there were definitely times where it was just like, oh my gosh. Like, I'm probably picking up a unit. But rather than focus on the Rainmakers, my approach was to focus on the captains. Get the captains out of there. If he can shoot me with the Rainmakers once a turn, that's a heck of a lot better than him positioning charges to try to shoot me 2 and 3 times a turn with those Rainmakers. And then when I finally did line up charges on the Rainmakers, like I said, I was winning assaults, and that was really what shifted the game. And he and I have played quite a few games together, so he kind of knew that's how it was going to go, is if I could get into melee with them, I was going to be able to push him back, activate him, charge him again, pin him, etc., and just kind of keep bullying them. And that's exactly what ended up happening, but it didn't happen until like turn 4. And then he had 2 Stunt Bots, which are effectively like the Tank Buster Striders. And these things are, oh man, these are gross. Like, sure, they hit on 5-ups, but they're nasty. seven up armor, heavy armor. So again, they are Striders, and they just throw 4 anti-tank dice, 2 at AP2, 2 at AP5. It is only devastating D2, but that's still a 50% hit rate. Means you're probably getting one of each through. You know, like I said, they were rough, and his dice for the stunt bots were hot, and my dice for the Striders were not. So like my Striders weren't really effective this game. His stunt bots were abnormally effective this game. It was pretty wild. And then, so a big part of it is, again, we've played enough games together that we both know how each other plays at this point. And it was a good game. But the big thing was that, mid-board is 24 inches. Right? And deployment zones are 12 inches. So I slammed because he had me deploy first, which means I got to go first. So I slammed my jet bike lieutenant right up on the line, took my 12-inch scout to hit mid-board, and then took my turn to activate him first, and then picked up an HVA, and then moved over cover. Like, it is only a 6-inch move, but was able to move over cover and just have that HVA turn 1. Had I not been able to set that up, there's no way I could have even played that game. Like, that was arguably the move that won me the game. It's the move that kept me in the game to make it even winnable in the first place. It was one of those, like, I was setting it up and I was looking and I was like, man, I'm pretty sure I can do this. It's 12 inches from edge of the board to the deployment zone, and it should be 12 inches from the deployment zone to mid-board, and I just have to touch the HVA. Yeah, I should be able to do this. So I walked him through it, and he was like, yeah, that sounds right. And he was like, man, I didn't even think about that when I had you go first. And I was like, I didn't either until I started deploying. And I was like, man, this is a thing I can do. And he was, but then he did sprint up, grab both of them, and then it was just catch up from there. Like the first couple turns was him scoring a lot of points and me not. And then the last 2 turns was me scoring a lot of points and him not. And like I said, that's been my interaction with Enforcers. Is you're scoring low early and hoping you can make it up on the back end. And maybe that's not the best way to play them, but that's what I found that works for me. Overall, very enjoyable game, and I'm glad to see that Garrett is getting the army figured out. Early on, he was really struggling with them, and he's starting to kind of see things and get it figured out, so that's good to see. And he actually just picked up some Plague also, so he's really excited. They're a very melee-centric army, and that's where he and I both like to play in a lot of the games that we play, which is why Enforcers was such a weird pick for me. And again, Enforcers wasn't even my first choice, but it's a fun army to play with. But I am going to be probably looking at some Night Stalkers pretty soon because they look like a lot of fun. And I am going to do a video series on them after I wrap up my Plague. So, before we dig into the last list, I just want to remind everybody, if you like the videos and you want to support me, there are some links in the description. You can buy some Phoenix Gaming merch. I've got my first hoodie ordered. It should be here before Adepticon so that I can wear it for Adepticon. I've got hats, all kinds of stuff. It's the Fourth Wall link. And then there's some Amazon affiliate links if you want to do, if you want to buy some models and give me a little bit of a commission. I appreciate it. But let's dig into the final list. So, interestingly, last game of the league was against my daughter, and I had posted on the Firefight Fanatics page about this because it was real funny. So she's only really, I shouldn't say that. She's been to a couple tournaments, so she's played maybe 15 games, right? Probably somewhere in there. Only maybe 6 of them, I guess it'd be almost 8 now because of the league. But we'll say like 7 or 8 games haven't been against me. And outside of a game against Forge Fathers, she hasn't done poorly. But Forge Fathers, if you've never played against them, they can be kind of a tough nut to crack depending on the mission and the player and everything else. Because of how efficient they are. And if you don't understand how to play against an army that's that efficient. As you know, she's one of those, like, I'm just going to move forward, cover be damned, you know. And so, like, the Forge Fathers player was able to just be like, all right, we'll pick that up, now pick that up, now pick that up. Outside of that, like, she's done pretty well. She's 2-0 in the league up to this point. She just beat Asterions. She played Austin, the guy I played round 2. She had just beat them. Technically, she had a bye round 1 because we have an odd number. But the way I assign buys is you get a win, but you get the average of what everybody scored, win or lose. And then you get the average of kill points everybody scored, win or lose. But the game against the Asterions was her first actual win, and she put it to him. Part of it was, again, action economy. He has a fairly elite force, fairly low volume. It was the HVA mission, so he didn't necessarily have the units to kind of dedicate to going and grabbing things because of the way his list was built. He started with the Black Talons off the table, and really, and he and I talked about it afterward, like, really, they should have been on it. Like, into the Plague, like, there's no reason to not have them on it just to get those extra shots, to soften things up. If you're able to shoot those Black Talons 4 times in a single turn, that's going to go a long way to getting rid of zombies before zombies can get rid of you, right? So, it's one of those, like, she did some really cool things that were really funny, and I didn't, like... And to his credit, he was totally fine with me kind of guiding. Like, I would be like, look, here's what you have on the table. Here's all of your options. You pick which option. I'm not playing the game, but because Austin's okay with it, I'm going to present you with all your options. So, you know, big shout out to him for allowing that to happen so that she can learn and become a better player. And honestly, I think part of it is that, like, it also helps him because there were times where he's like, man, I didn't even see that. I didn't even think about that. So I do think that that's part of it too, is that he also appreciates getting a little bit more insight. But there were things she did that I was just like, man, that's a big brain play, kid. You know, she grabbed an objective with, I think it was her ghouls. And then there was this piece of terrain that was kind of like an L shape, because we have a lot of 40k terrain is what we use, because that's, again, where we come from. So she runs around the back of it, and then she multi-activates her zombies, and then literally surrounds the ghouls with the zombies to wall them off. And because the zombies are height 2 and the ghouls are height 2, unless he's height 3, he cannot shoot at the ghouls. So he's got to shoot at the zombies, and then he's trying to position to shoot at them. Then she tags the zombies with their smoke, makes them -2 to hit, and that was all her. None of that was me. She was just like, I'm going to wrap the ghouls up with the zombies. They're -2 to hit. So now it's like, all right, well, your efficiency goes from hitting on 3s to hitting on 5s with your lower volume. And you can't target the unit with the objectives. So she was able to just sit on 2 objectives almost the whole game by doing that. And it was just like, man, like, that's some big brain shit. Like, that's awesome. So again, big shout out to her. She won that game, and she won it very convincingly. I think the final score was 24-3. And that was really just because he spread out a little too thin, so he couldn't remove units. And he'd never played, I think, against Plague before, so that was kind of a learning experience for him also. But she got her first win. She did a great job. We went into round 3, and I walked in, and I said, well, kid, I got good news and I got bad news. What do you want first? And she said, well, I want the good news, Dad. And I said, well, the good news is that right now, you're in first place in the league. And she was through the roof. Like, she was so happy. Laughing, dancing, giddy as can be. And then you could just see the realization wash over her. And she stopped and she looked at me and she was like, but what's the bad news? And I told her, I was like, kid, you already know what it is. And she was like, I do not want to play you. And I was like, well, you get to. Like, that's where we're at. So, it was an awesome game. We had a lot of fun. Uh, I'll go through her list. We'll talk about some of the things that maybe happened and what maybe like either one of us could have done. But overall, she did great. We're gonna talk about her list. I helped her with it. We helped put it. I helped her put it together based off of again feedback from the community and then playing with the army a few times. We have a Leaper Sentient. All friendly non-pin, non-vehicle units within 6 inches may make a 3-inch advance. And then they can engage an enemy unit as an assault with that movement. Yeah, he's awesome. And he's one of those where I could make the argument that the Leaper Sentient is an auto take in almost every plague list. But I could understand why somebody might not want it, because the melee isn't crazy good for what you're getting out of it. It is only AP1, and there are better options for damage output. But the 3-inch movement, man, that's awesome. Homie's got Frenzy. That order's really good. Like, that unit is just, to me, an auto take. Like, there's no reason not to. And she did name some of these. So this is Splinich, which is the Plague Lord. And again, Plague Lord, really good. There's times where I struggle to feel like it's worth its points. 150 seems expensive, but then I remember that dude is just like a beat stick. It's basically a rat fiend that also gives you dice, and has a command order, so I understand the 150. But it's, 6 attacks, AP3, anti-tank, Frenzy 2, Tactician green die. He's terrifying, unflinching, very inspiring. And then his aura is really good, but honestly, she didn't use his aura a ton. A lot of her command points were spent blowing up zombies. And, I think that's probably what most people like to spend their command points on for this army, and that's super fair. But it gives you resilient, frenzy, and extra AP. So it's a really good support aura. I think she used it 1 turn in the 2 games that she played. Again, he's really good. You could make a case for or against him depending on your build. I think for what we did, he's very good. I'd like to see like an Oops All Ghouls type of list running a lot of generals and lieutenants. I think that could be really nutty. I don't know if it'd be good, but it'd be a lot of fun. But overall, Plague Lord's awesome. We've talked about it. We have 3 units of zombies, 2 units of 15 and 1 unit of 14, and that really just came down to points. And the zombies, I've kind of made my feelings known about zombies, how I feel about them. They're weird. I don't know if I like them. I don't know if I don't like them. They have this kind of weird feeling where it's like sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad. But for how she's been using them, they've been awesome. She and I had this talk about it, and she started to figure out how to use them the way I would use them. And that's, we've got our heavy weapons platform. We throw smoke at a unit of zombies. We put them up front. We smoke them, and then we use those to provide cover for everything moving behind it. Because again, -2 to hit is really good, so there's no reason not to do that. And they're cheap. So like if they get targeted or they get shot, it doesn't feel as bad as if it's like ghouls or leapers or something like that. We have 1 unit of leapers. It's 4 bodies. Again, they're countercharge, frenzy 2, really good. They sprint 15. There's ways to get them 21 inches across the board. It takes some finesse. We've talked about that in our plague videos. And then I think just 2 units of ghouls, and it's 13 ghouls and 2 dogs. And again, the dogs are there because she likes the dogs. That's really what it boils down to. She's like, I'm not putting these on the table without bringing the dogs. Yeah, whatever, dude. It's your army. Do your thing. I'd probably bring them too, just for the extra melee dice. I like them. But, let's see. A lot of, 15-inch sprint, which is really good. The Blaze Away. She found that the Blaze Away is more fun than regular shooting. Because you're just rolling more dice. So it didn't even matter if things had a modifier. She was just like, give me all the dice, which was really funny and fun to watch. And then we have a unit of 4 murder birds. And I talked about this. I haven't put my specialist video up, but I did talk about it in the specialist video. I was really unsure about how I felt about them until I watched her game against the Asterions when she activated, I think it was the Leaper Sentient, used it to move them 3 inches up, and then activated them, used the order to move them 3 inches up, and then sprinted 18 and got 24 inches of movement out of them, and then they just like mulched whatever squad it was they touched. It was just like, oh, I see. These are way better than they look on paper because of how you can set things up, and their threat range is really, really good. We got the weapon team I already told you about. Again, the big thing with them was just having the smoke. There was a couple turns where she was like, oh, I'll throw some dice and see if I can pin you. Or I'll throw some dice to like plink shields type of thing. But for the most part, they were there to smoke. And that did a lot to keeping her units on the table also. You know, he had Black Talons that were shooting, you know, twice. 2 units of Black Talons that were shooting twice. But instead of hitting on 3s, they were hitting on 5s. And then if he steady aimed to hit on 4s, that meant they weren't moving. And that's not the end of the world. Because again, if you're not moving, that means you're not coming to take the objective. So again, it's one of those like, really did a good job of using those to pick the right targets to cut down on the efficiency of some of his army. We had 2 bursters. Those were mostly in the list because she wanted to kind of play with them and see how they did. I had just gotten them built for her because that's our deal, is I do the building, she does the painting. And, you know, it's one of those like, and again, I touched on this in the video that'll be up probably this weekend. It's not that they're bad, and it's not that they're good. They're just really weird. I feel like they're a very matchup-specific type unit. Like, there's some matchups where they're probably really good, and there's some matchups where you're just like, why did I bring these? We had 2 aberrations, Beefy and Squelchy. And again, like, the aberrations to me, again, are just like the Rat Fiends. Like, you just take them. Like, they're just good. Like, they're so good. A Plague Teraton, a squad of 2, you know, and again, a lot of it is she likes the models, and that works because they can hold objectives, and then teleport is nutty because, you know, with teleport, you can ignore terrain rules and enemy unit proximity when moving. When charging, the unit will also ignore the effects of a hindered charge, and enemy units contacted may not make an assault reaction even if eligible. You know, like, they're wild. They're AP1 with anti-tank. You know, so it's like they're just kind of weird, but they're really good. Like, and they can control objectives and stuff. So again, they're a really good unit. AP1 feels a little weird, but overall, great unit. Great unit. And then she had a Plague Strider. This one has the Flamer and the Chainsaw. And that was really, she and I talked about it, and I was like, you're going to need something with, like, heavy armor. Probably, and I told her, like, the Urban Assault may not be the best choice, but, you know, it's cheap. It gives you heavy armor. It's not bad in melee. Some of your orders will stack with it. Because, like, I think the Plague Lords does, because I don't think it has the non-vehicle correct. So, like, she'll have orders that can stack with it. So, overall, it's a good unit, you know. And she was like, yeah, all right. And there were, like, again, that game against the Asterions, it did really well. And even the game against me, she used it pretty well. What really it came down to with our game, because what was our final score? It wasn't as bad as it looks. Oh, I didn't put it in yet. It was Lockdown was the mission. Which one is Lockdown? There we go. Okay, Lockdown is the mission where you have 2 objectives on the table. You can claim them using normal rules, so like a unit within 3, blah, 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 blah. But then you have an additional scoring parameter that says if you have the most unit strength within 6. And honestly, this was another game where, like, early on, she was, like, trouncing me. But as turn 3 and turn 4 hit, I started to gain traction, gain the ground back. And then I think it was turn 4, she just kind of got deflated because I had started to really remove units. And at that point, I think she was just kind of checked out of the game. The final score, I have it written down, but I don't have it in front of me. But I think I ended up beating her by like 8 points. And honestly, like, this probably stayed winnable for her if she'd have stayed checked into the game. But I think she just got deflated and just felt like, well, Dad's beat me again, you know. But overall, like I said, she played it well. The first 3 turns, she did real well. And then, like I said, turn 4, she just kind of, like, checked out. And that does happen. And maybe, honestly, she was just kind of checked out anyway. I don't know. But overall, like I said, did really well with the mission. Her list did pretty well. I liked it a lot. There was a lot of variety there. And that's one thing I will say with 1,500 points, I do like that you can see a lot more variety. You get to see a bit more. The tables look a little bit more full. It's a really good size game. Like, 1,500's great. I've heard people talk about playing 2,000, and that could be fun too. But really, like I said, for me, 1,500, perfect game. So that is going to put me, I'm going to end up in first place in the league because I'll be the only one to go undefeated. And then we have one more matchup to shake out before we can get the rest of the placings. But there's actually a good chance that she comes in second just because she still scored really well. She's going to finish 2-1. I think we'll have one other player 2-1. And I think her scoring is going to be high enough that it's going to keep her above that person. But we're going to check it out and do all that later because I think they're wrapping up their game this weekend. So that's going to do it for the stream. I'm not going to put timestamps in right away. I'm going to try to get to it this weekend. You know, so again, if you're watching and you're looking for timestamps, I'm sorry. It's one of those, like, I wanted to stream and get out there and talk about this because I hadn't been on in a while and I needed to get out and kind of reach out to the community. And then I will have a video up Saturday or Sunday as well. That being said, we're going to wrap this up. Again, if you're at Adepticon and you see me, don't hesitate to come out and say hi. I will definitely talk to you. And I love talking to people. As you can tell, I'm a chatty Cathy. And if you got any questions, feel free to ask. And that's it. I hope you all have a great weekend. I'll have the Plague Specialist units up this week. I'll have the support up probably either this weekend or next week. And then we're going to start digging into Night Stalkers. And then after that, we are going to... I do have a Fallout Wasteland Warfare video I'm going to be digging on. But we're going to start taking a look at Dead Zone. And we're probably going to start taking a look at Kings of War. I'm probably going to start diving more into some of the Mantic systems. As I've played more of their games, I found that I like more of their games. Kings of War is the only one that I'm a little like, I don't know about this yet. And a lot of that just has to do with the turn structure. That is the turn structure I'm trying to get away from. So I'm not so close-minded that I won't give it a fair trial. It's just the one that I'm most skeptical of. I've played Halo. I love Halo. So playing Dead Zone was like, yeah, okay. There are differences, obviously, but the skeleton's still the same. And we played one game of it, and I was like, okay, this game's great. I wouldn't mind digging into Dreadball again. I understand it's currently out of print. I know they just announced something on the website on that. I'm going to probably take a look at that here later. That being said, let's see. Dreadball I wouldn't mind looking at. And Kings of War, Dead Zone. Yeah, I think that'll wrap it up. If you've got any requests for me, drop them in the comments. Again, if you like the content, make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you subscribe. I appreciate it. It goes a long way to help me make more and more content. And then outside of that, again, have a great weekend.